right, well, much of our discussion this morning has been about events during question time in Parliament yesterday afternoon. And in particular, I guess something that's gone viral, as they say these days, an impassioned and strong statement clapping back against a question from Labour's Jan Tinetti from the Workplace Relations Minister, ACT's Brooke van Velden. An impassioned, I think, response and justified response that employed the C word, because the C word had been deployed against Ms Van Velden and indeed other members of the National Party and national female cabinet ministers, along with another number of other misogynistic terms. And I didn't even know what girl math meant until someone explained it to me this morning. But it was a moment in Parliament. And I sent one letter text last night that just said respect to Brooke van Velden, because I looked at that as an interesting moment in parliamentary history, and I think it deserved respect. Brooke van Velden joins us by phone now. Brooke, good morning to you.
Good morning, Sean.
That was quite a day yesterday, wasn't it?
It is quite a day, and I think in some ways a little shocking for some people, because I'm not a very sweary person, so may not have been expected. But look, I think for me it was not about, putting any particular words in Hansard or this. It was about standing up for my colleagues and the misogynistic abuse that they had been subjected to over the last few days. And I was just shocked that the Labour Party attempted to bring that misogynistic abuse into the debating chamber. And I thought I must respond.
Hey, Brooke, can I ask you, just before we go any further, would you take some calls for some people? A lot of people want to talk to you, I think.
Sure, open to it. I'm happy to use the 10 minutes that you want. How you like to.
All right. Okay. 0800 332 if you want to talk to Brooke, give her a message, ask her a question. Brooke, looking back today, and I had a couple of callers earlier this morning, and I don't think you're a person who is known for being overly emotional or florid or flowery, but I got the feeling, and I looked at it a few times, that you were actually getting frustrated at the kind of inherent patronising attitude of your allies, Winston, Chris Bishop, Shane Jones, even Jerry Brownlee, who appeared to be trying to protect you as a girl from having to engage in this piece of, this Donnybrook, this brouhaha. And it was almost like you were sitting there going, for God's sake, guys, sit down, I've got this.
Yeah, well, look, I think everybody on our side of the chamber has been shocked at the abuse that has been levied at, the female senior members of cabinet over the past week. And I think it comes from a good place. If we have, us as women who don't think it's acceptable, I think it's also quite good that we've got men willing to also call it out. Because ultimately, no one should have been debating this in Parliament at all. Let's not forget, it was Labour who brought it to the chamber. And I do think it is actually quite nice and respectful that, male members of my side of the House were wanting to front up and say, look, we don't actually think
You didn't feel like they were patronising you, saying you couldn't handle it?
Well, I was getting a little bit frustrated, Sean, I wasn't being able to speak for myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I ultimately did, and I said my piece, and I really hope that it draws a line in the sand and holds a mirror up to the people who were attempting to bring this misogynistic abuse into Parliament to say, hey, look at yourselves, look at what you're doing. Do you think it's acceptable? And I just, beg the question. A few days ago when the Labour Party shared an image of me dressed as a Nazi, the leader of the Labour Party actually came out and said he didn't think sharing that was appropriate. And I would ask him in this instance whether or not he thought it was appropriate for a Labour former Minister for Women to bring a message of misogyny into the chamber. And I think it's been a bit shocking for everybody around the country that they're not willing to stand up and condemn that.
Yeah, and look, it's interesting you raised that issue. That, to me, too, is an incredibly offensive thing to do to a man or a woman, is to typify them as a Nazi. Godwin's law says it means you've lost the argument. Geez, you've had, mind you, I guess this is what politics is now. It's pretty polarised, isn't it?
Unfortunately so. I believe that all members of Parliament, and pretty much anybody in this country, to be honest, deserves basic respect. And we should show that to each other. And if anybody in Parliament from whichever party, was being presented as a Nazi, I would want to show them support and say that that's not okay. But that hasn't happened. And if someone was getting insane levels of misogynistic abuse, I would also expect to show them support and say, I also don't believe this is okay from any side.
Though I must admit, Brooke, in the best traditions of just old-fashioned sexism, a number of my male correspondents have suggested that the colour, at least, of the Wehrmacht uniform didn't look bad on you. I have some callers for you. Tom, you're with Brooke.
Oh, good morning, Minister. Well done. Your poise is amazing to be able to take that. And I thought you counted very nicely. Could be a little bit shocking to some, but hey, you're only pulling back what they're throwing out. Yeah. How can we get the media in this country, apart from these guys and ZB, to start to play with a straight bat, to put what you're putting forward in a middle of the line, the bill that you want to put through, and regarding the equal pay.
Brooke, you there, Brooke? Oh, Brooke, sorry.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. So how can we get the media to do a better job and to not indulge in the sort of stuff you've been subject to?
Well, it's a very hard question, because I think in part what I've done is I've called it out and I've held up that mirror to themselves, and I hope that they will respond in kind and actually start playing the actual politics, which is the issue, and not the people. One of the ways I think people can always, counteract this is, this is legacy media, and fewer people are actually reading and watching legacy media. And they're going online to find their own. And so if we're able to get our message out there by people sharing ACT's posts, by people sharing the government's posts, we can actually counteract this narrative. But it requires everybody to essentially play their part, so that legacy media say, oh, I wonder why our readership and our viewership is falling off.
Yeah. As I said, I had a bad day with Andrea Vance last Sunday as well, but not as bad as yours. Matt, you've got a question for the Minister.
Good morning, Mr. Plunket. Good morning, Brooke. Good on you. I love the C-bomb. I just love it. But I think it was more than that. I think what it was a shock and awe that broke the wokeness, and the way it was delivered was professional. And I just wish that Christopher Luxon had the guts to stand up and speak like you do.
Was there a question there, or is that just it, Matt?
Just a statement.
Okay,
you know me.
Very good, because it did say question from Brooke. Okay.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Neil.
Good morning, Brooke. Yes, I am. Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning, Brooke. I thought your statement was fantastic. It came across not as political theatre, but as someone who is completely hacked off and genuine. My question is the use of the C word. What was your thought process around using the actual word as opposed to a phrase like the C word?
Well, I think in part, everybody who was reading the article knew exactly what Andrew Vance was writing. I think in my response, I don't believe it would have had the cut through, especially with who I am as a person and how people know me. Is, I am quite calm and I don't swear. And I think using my voice and my freedom of speech to say what had been written, I think provided people the shock of, oh my God, was that really what people had said? Because it was coming from the words of Brooke van Velden. And I think it has had that effect, and I will go back to being my normal calm self. But to be honest, I was a little bit annoyed at the misogyny that my colleagues had been subjected to, and I think that showed. I was just being myself, but using the words that people were publishing against us to let them hear it themselves, and I think it showed.